My name is Damon Gamo. This is my weatherboard house. This is a time-lapse of my girlfriend's pregnancy. There's 3 months to go. And this is a photo of me at age 10. I was a rare boy whose face grew into his teeth. 5 years ago, when I met my girlfriend, I was pretty much living on cigarettes, sugar, and my homemade Australian pizzas. But then, as men often do, they feign interest in things to impress a girl.
The love is blind.
For me, it was healthy eating. I actually cut out refined sugar from my diet to seal the deal. But now sugar is dominating the headlines. And there's so much debate and conjecture on the topic that it's hard to know what to believe. But with this little person on the way, I feel like I need some definitive answers.
If the average Australian family of 4 had to buy the sugar they are consuming in a week, they would be going to the supermarket, taking 6 1-kilo bags of sugar off the shelves, 6, taking it home, eating it all that week, and then going back next week and doing it again.
Clearly, the ability to be on a high sugar diet is really new, especially in terms of evolutionary time zone.
Sugar has become so prevalent in today's society that if you removed all the items containing it from a standard supermarket's shelves, just 20% of items would remain.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the condensed history of sugar. The first reports of sugar came from New Guinea in 8000 BC. Local mythology says that the human race came about after a man made love to the stalk of a sugarcane. Then, by a trade of migration routes, the cane made its way to India. In the 12th century, sugar arrived in Europe, and due to its rarity, it quickly became a status symbol for royalty. Queen Elizabeth I had a real love of sugar. So much so that her teeth rotted and went black from it. Yeah. At the start of the 20th century, sugar was still seen as a treat, something you would add to a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. But then in 1955, an event occurred that significantly influenced the amount of sugar we eat today.
A stunned nation hears that its president is stricken with a heart attack at the...
On September the 23rd, 1955, the US President Dwight Eisenhower suffered a heart attack, and the issue of heart disease was thrust into the public domain.
Summoned to the hospital, a famed Boston heart specialist.
2 strong theories emerged. One led by an American scientist named Ancel Keys, who declared that fat was the problem, while a British doctor named John Yudkin believed sugar was to blame.
I'd be very happy if everybody had 4 pounds of sugar a year. They eat 100 pounds.
Over the next 2 decades, the discussion brought fierce arguments from both camps. But by the end of the 1970s, Ancel Keys had won out. Fat became the villain, sugar was exonerated, and the low-fat movement was in full swing.
We institutionalize this idea that a low-fat diet is a healthy diet. So what you want to do is remove fats. This is how industry perceives this. We're going to remove fat from otherwise healthy foods. And when we do this, we have to replace the calories. We have to make sure we have the right mouthfeel. It has to taste as good as it did with fat, and the best way to do that is with sugar.
With sugar now saturating our food supply and a constant confusion over its effects on our health, the only real way to get some answers is for me to start eating sugar again and see what it does to my body. So the first step is to set up an experiment with the help of a team of experts. My chief sugar advisor is the author David Gillespie, aka the Crusader. In charge of my blood tests is one of Australia's leading clinical pathologists, Dr. Ken Zakaris, aka Professor Blood. My nutritionist is Sharon Johnson, the Celtic food queen. And supervising my overall health is Dr. Debbie Herbst, aka Checkups. Okay, so I want to do this mission. I want to find out what sugar does to me. What kind of things do I need to do?
If you want to match Australian averages, you're going to have to be in the range 40 teaspoons of sugar a day.
40 a day?
Yeah, 40 a day. That's what's embedded in most of the processed food that most people are eating.
So, right, so does that mean I'm going to eat a lot of these kind of sour rainbow blowpipes? I mean, is that how am I going to get to 40 teaspoons?
You won't need to come near a place like this to get to 40 teaspoons. You just go to a supermarket and you'll get to 40 teaspoons.
Right. The point is to test out a very high sugar diet and to see what effects we get, what changes I notice in the body. 2 months, I want to eat 40 teaspoons of sugar a day.
40 teaspoons?
40 teaspoons.
Ooh. How are you going to do that?
Off-the-shelf breakfast cereals like Just Right, low-fat flavoured yogurt. Another good one would be some beans on toast.
Baked beans?
1 serving of a iced tea, you'll end up with nearly 9 teaspoons of sugar.
If I can achieve 40 teaspoons a day without touching perceived candy or junk food, I mean, I can't quite fathom that's possible, but if we can do that and see some changes, then that seems like a pretty good story.
A lot of your health markers are going to be going in very much the wrong direction, and I'm very glad to hear that you're going to be having some medical supervision because I think you're going to need it.
Anyone in the family with diabetes?
No.
No,
Not that I know of.
Not that you know of. Good. And heart disease?
No, all pretty thin and wiry Irish or French folk.
We're going to look at how the blood sugar changes, obviously. We've got blood tests that can look at the effect of the heart, but even more than that, we're looking for the changes that might occur in the liver and its production of fat.
I'd like to go to 1932, please. Done.
So you've got a really normal, healthy blood pressure, 121/79, and your heart rate's pretty good at 75, so that's pretty good. Alrighty, so we'll just have a listen to your heart, see what it sounds like. You know what it's saying, Damon.
Don't do this crazy
Exactly,
thing.
that's exactly what I heard it saying.
There are some tests that we're doing just to make sure that you're not doing anything too stupid here.
Usually I'm telling people not to eat all this sort of stuff, so...
I personally think you're insane for doing it at all. But no, honestly, I think it's dangerous. But I guess on the plus side, everybody else is already doing it.
So this is where my health stands pre-experiment. My total calorie intake is approximately 2,300 a day, with 50% coming from good fats like avocado and nuts, 26% from proteins such as eggs, meat or fish, and 24% from carbohydrates like fresh vegetables. And of course, there is no refined sugar. I currently weigh 76 kilograms with a waist circumference of 84 centimetres. My blood tests showed a very healthy liver, a very low level of triglyceride, which is fat in the bloodstream, and thankfully no sign of insulin resistance or diabetes. Overall, I rated slightly healthier than the average Western male of my age. The next step in the experiment was to do a shop. To calculate my 40 teaspoons, I need to keep in mind that 1 teaspoon equals roughly 4 grams of sugar. But I also need a lesson in the different types of sugar.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to meet the sugar family. When we eat certain foods, they adhere to a rule. They break down to glucose, which our body uses for fuel. Breads, pasta, veggies, and grains all turn to glucose to be used by our brain. but also our cells and our organs, too. So without any glucose, there would be no you. Lactose is next, and she's as smooth as silk. She's the first sugar mammals have. It's in their mother's milk. You'll find it in cheese and milk and tubs of yogurt, too. But take care if you're intolerant. You'll be rushing to the loo. Now, sucrose is the sugar that all the fuss is about. Some say it's dangerous, while others still have doubt. Sucrose is the table sugar we have in coffee or tea. She's the sugar family's sweet little daughter. Or not, apparently. Now, this table sugar, or sucrose, is made up of two sugars. It is 50% glucose, the head of the family, plus 50% fructose. Now, fructose may well be the sugar family's mischievous teenage son, because in the past, this fructose was very, very rare. It was found in fruits and veggies and honey, if you dared. But now we find it everywhere, in so many foods we eat. And you'll always know if you're eating fructose, because it's the thing that makes food sweet. You see, people on this planet are growing sicker every day. And many scientists now believe that fructose has a role to play.
The first load. What do we make these middle shelves? The sugar zone.
I love it.
Yeah, some juicy juice. Yeah. The juice boxes back. Yep. Up and go. So here are the rules for my next 60 days. I must consume 40 teaspoons of sugar a day, but they must be hidden sugars, found in commonly perceived healthy foods and drinks. So no soft drink, chocolate, confectionery, or ice cream. These 40 teaspoons of sugar will consist of sucrose and fructose specifically. They can be added, like jam, or naturally occurring, like sultanas. I must always choose low-fat foods and maintain the same level of exercise as I already do. That's 3 laps of my garden twice a week and a 10-minute workout on my homemade gym. And by homemade, I mean homemade. Tomorrow morning, I start. What are your feelings?
I hope you're okay.
Darling, do we have a metric cup, like to measure size?
Oh, yeah.
Right, so this Just Right tells me that it's 12 grams of sugar per serving, right? So that's divided by 4, that's roughly 3 teaspoons of sugar per serving. That's a recommended serving size with 3 teaspoons of sugar. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a growing boy. I'm gonna need a little bit more of that. That feels like a shot of Just Right. Yeah, maybe 2.5. Okay, so 2.5. So 1 was just under 3 teaspoons, 2 is 6 teaspoons, another half is about 7.5 teaspoons of sugar just in that bowl. I added the yogurt yet. Per serving, there is 27 grams, but a lot of that's going to be lactose, so I reckon 18 grams. 18 divided by 4 is just over 4. So 4 to my 7, so there's 11 teaspoons of sugar, and then I've got to add my juice. I'm going to put about 400 mils of apple juice, that'll do me. There, we're looking at 9 teaspoons. So this combined, I'm looking at nearly 20 teaspoons to start the day. Hi, David, how you going?
Good, how are you?
But I just had a quick question. I just sort of had my first breakfast and it got to about 20 teaspoons.
20 teaspoons?
I almost couldn't believe it, but I did all the maths and it just seems ridiculous.
Mate, you're going to have to be on a diet for the rest of the day if you're only allowed to have 20 teaspoons for the rest of the day.
Oh, that's what I mean. I'm going to have to eat celery for the rest of the day. Just obscene.
When we were still foraging and hunting and gathering and trying to search for fruit and things in our environment, we needed to be highly attuned to what sweetness there was, because we really need the calories. And of course now we bring with us that ancient lust for sugar, the ability to find even small amounts, and it's a case where we were looking for a little, but now we have too much. And so the system in an evolutionary terms is not really set up to deal with this sudden abundance of highly refined sugar.
After just 2 days of the experiment, I was amazed at how easy it was to get to 40 teaspoons without eating any junk food. I've just had a breakthrough as to how we might be consuming so much fructose. I just bought these 4 apples. Now I know that if I tried to eat these apples, I'd probably get through 2 of them and I'd feel full. The fibre in the fruit would tell my body to stop. It's had enough to eat. But I want to see what happens if I can juice these 4 apples. Right, so that's 4 apples. That's the sugar from 4 apples in 1 glass. Now 1 apple is about 4 teaspoons of sugar, so that's 16 teaspoons of sugar in that glass. See, nature has given us this perfect little packet, and it's got all the nutrients, the fibre that tells us when we're full, and just the right amount of sugar in this. But what we do is we invent a machine like this, which extracts only the sugar, and then we throw everything else away. This high amount of sugar in juice, and drinks in general, was certainly the biggest surprise of the first week.
Beverage tend to really create a rush, what I kind of call a tsunami effect. So you basically have this huge wave of sugar that gets to your liver, and that has a lot of consequence.
It was now day 12, and time for my first weigh-in. Moment of truth. 79.3. Huh?
I'm about to cry.
What? Are you
3.2 kilos.
in 12 days?
In 12 days.
And that's without 1 fizzy drink, no ice cream, no chocolate. That is eating healthy foods.
It's alarming. Alarming. I guess it's...
Debbie's alarm wasn't about the amount of weight I had gained. It was the fact that it was all around my belly. This is what's known as visceral fat. I'm having a baby! Here's a great example of it. On this person, the fat comes up as black. You can see there is a very small amount of fat just under the skin, but lots of visceral fat on the inside, cramping the organs. There is a term for this: toffee. Thin on the outside, fat on the inside.
We know that with fructose, you tend to accumulate more fat in this area. We don't know why, but we know, on the other hand, that when you do accumulate that fat in this area, you have a lot of metabolic disease that are associated with this.
On day 15, it occurred to me what 40 teaspoons of sugar would actually look like, stripped of its cleverly marketed packaging. Today, I'm going to eat 40 actual teaspoons of sugar. Just right, low-fat yogurt. There's 10 teaspoons of sugar. Here, just a bowl of plain Vital Wheats. So what I'm going to do this now equals that. It's time for my mid-morning snack. Now I could have this amount of frozen yogurt, or 11. So it's lunch. I have this delicious piece of chicken here. Now I could add half a packet of this teriyaki chicken sauce. Or alternatively, now to wash it down, I could have one of these. Or
I'll take the sweet, you can take the sound. Every single minute, every single hour.
So it's the mid-afternoon slump. Now, as a pick-me-up, I could have this Go Natural Superfood Apple Strawberry Cranberry Ripple Bar, or I could have this 7-teaspoon water cracker sugar sandwich. It was at this point that I thought I'd better check in with Professor Blood.
The big change is that the liver function tests have had an amazing rise in one of the enzyme levels, the ALT level. The ALT is an enzyme in the liver which helps the reactions go out. If it appears in your blood, because that's where we measured it, it shows that the liver cells are releasing their contents, i.e. they're being damaged or dying. And so it's really...
My liver cells are dying.
They are. It's obviously getting full of fat. You've got the signs of a fatty liver. And this is really the first time I've actually seen that it can be actually developed in 2 or 3 weeks.
Great. Given my liver has turned to fat after just 18 days, I think it's time to take a closer look at what sugar does once it enters the body. This is the actor Brenton Thwaites. He's very kindly volunteered his body for the following demonstration. After sugar enters the body, it splits into 2 parts, fructose and glucose, both of which make their way to the liver. Now, once in the liver, the glucose is dealt with efficiently. It's either used immediately for energy, or it's stored for later, like a spare battery. But the fructose half of sugar is very different. The liver doesn't have a system to regulate the fructose because it was so rare in nature. So it hoovers it out of the bloodstream whether it needs it or not. And if all our spare batteries are full, then it rapidly turns it into fat.
Some of that fat is going to stay in the liver, and you're going to have increased risk for insulin resistance and diabetes.
What also happens is that this fat in the liver is then sent out into the bloodstream as triglycerides, which can lead to excess weight, plus blocked arteries and heart disease. Now, when we're eating lots of sugar and other carbohydrates like bread and pasta, we're producing lots of glucose. A hormone called insulin is released, which is like a key that helps to open our cells' doors so they can absorb all the glucose, remove it from the bloodstream, and burn it for energy. The more glucose in the blood, the more insulin is released. But the key point for us is that while this insulin is in the blood dealing with all the glucose, it tells our fat cells to hold on to the fat. It actually turns off our fat-burning processes. So when we're eating lots of sugar, we're putting fat into our bodies via the fatty liver. Plus, because of all the glucose, we maintain the level of insulin, which tells our fat cells to hold on to the fat. We can't burn off fat when insulin is around dealing with all the sugar. This is what may be happening to a huge number of the population. It's highly unlikely with Brenton, though.
The issue that we're talking about is that there are these chronic diseases related to obesity and diabetes, heart disease, many cancers, gout, hypertension, high blood pressure, possibly Alzheimer's disease. The question is, would these diseases exist if sugar wasn't in the diet?
So this morning I've woken up and I feel pretty drained. I had a chicken dish last night that was pretty sweet. And I can just tell that my body feels lethargic and it's waiting for its next sugar injection. So the perfectly named Up and Go is going to start my day today, banana flavoured, with about 4 to 5 teaspoons of sugar.
It was obvious that sugar was affecting me physically, but the real surprise was the impact it was having on my moods.
It's amazing, it's so sweet, and I can feel my brain responds to it straight away, like it tastes delicious. The thing I've noticed the most is the mood swings. Big highs when I have the sugar and I feel super alert and switched on for about 45 minutes. Yes. And then I'll get this feeling of real lethargy. I'll feel vague, a bit aloof, until I get that next hit again, and then I'm right to concentrate.
I just noticed the attention is reduced and he's much more distracted. And it's very unlike him, very unusual.
What you're describing is absolutely what the research has shown. There's a high concentration, energy, followed by a crash.
The brain and body runs on glucose. If the glucose level is going constantly up and down, you know, zinging high and low and back and forth, then your mental function is just unstable. If your glucose level is stable and not fluctuating, then you have more clarity.
It's almost like the body is getting used to this new reality that I've created, and it gets its burst of energy from the sugar.
Yes.
And then when that's not happening, it's like going, okay, we're ready. Like, I guess I used to smoke, it's a similar feeling.
Tell me a little bit more about what it's like when you've just had some sugar and when you're on the sugar high.
Quite a childish thing comes out in me, like and then I'm full of beans for a while.
He can be like that in, you know, day-to-day life. He's really fun and playful, but the difference is there's a kind of manic edge to it that wasn't there before. It's kind of a bit more like, ah!
Now, the manic state is quite interesting because it's not the same as happiness, right? There's a sort of a sense of being wired. So it's interesting because that's the thing that we do see, and of course I'm not suggesting you've got bipolar disorder, but it's a phenomena that we see in that particular condition where there's a very high mood, but it's not actually a very pleasant mood.
So Damon, the way that blood sugar affects your mood, I like to explain to people with a really simple diagram. So this is your blood sugar levels here. This is the point where your brain is really happy because it's got enough sugar to keep it going. It is your most important organ in the body in that way. When you eat something that's really sugary, like lollies or fruit juices, that sort of thing, your blood sugar will spike really quickly and then it will crash down again really quickly. The reason it crashes really quickly is because in response to that sugar, the body releases insulin, the hormone, that takes it into the cells so it can be used for energy. So that big crash, though, means that your brain's no longer happy. So in response to that, we get the release of stress hormones like adrenaline, which is then signaling the brain to tell you to eat something sugary again, so that we can get it back up again. Wow. And so once again, we get more insulin and it dips down. And that's why you get the fluctuations in your mood from that sugar spiking and falling. And the problem with the adrenaline is that that can lead to anxiety and even panic attacks because of those mood changes.
Given my experience of fluctuating blood sugar levels, I couldn't help but think of children struggling to learn at school. Could a diet full of hidden sugar be contributing to the problem?
This has had a very profound impact on children's behavior, on mental illness. It has exacerbated many different types of neurological disorders, but we don't actually name what the cause is, which is the sugar that's in the diet.
Sugar Crisp is candy coated right down to the last wheat puff in the box.
As a cereal, it's dandy.
For snacks, it's so handy.
Or eat it like candy.
Toast Sugar Crisp.
Don't laugh, it's for the, you know why I'm doing it.
speed at which my high sugar diet was affecting me took us all by surprise. I was going to have to expand the scope of the experiment, and this would take me out of town for a few days. In 2002, I spent some time with an Aboriginal community and was stunned by the amount of sugar they consumed. Like so many Indigenous cultures introduced to a Western diet, their relationship with sugar seemed particularly destructive.
The Aborigines have remarkably little sugar in their diet. 2 or 3 small pieces of candy would be equal to the sum total of the amount of sweetness that an Aborigine would get in 1 year.
In 2008, Coca-Cola claimed that Australia's Northern Territory was their highest selling region per capita in the world. This was in large part due to the local stores in the Aboriginal communities. Just 100 kilometres from Uluru is the small town of Armata. It has always been alcohol-free, but in 2007, its population of just under 400 people consumed 40,000 litres of soft drink. So one Aboriginal man decided to do something about it. His name is John Tregenza. This is his case, this is his puturu, and this is his nickname. Why?
Because I cut through the bullshit. When I first came up here in 1973, I would estimate that, say, 10% of the people's diet came from the store. And now it's almost 100%. So it was obviously critical that people's health depended on what they were carrying out the store door.
This reliance on the store has been caused by a variety of environmental changes. The main one being the introduction of a foreign grass that took over the plains and drove away the native plants and animals that had provided bush tucker for centuries. Being in Armata, it was hard to believe that only 40 years ago, these people were living predominantly off the land.
All our families, all people, all our grandfathers and great-grandparents, they're only eating bush tuckers like emus, kangaroos, turkey, wild tomatoes, wild pigs. And they were healthy, no sickness. And then the white fella come into Australia. He bring all the sweet things like lollies, biscuit, everything.
With stores filling up with highly profitable sugary items and the community's health rapidly declining, John, his colleagues and a local health council established a program to ensure people had access to fresh, healthy produce. They called it Maiwiru. The Maiwiru quickly went to work. They removed deep fryers, added free cold water fountains, and hired a nutritionist to educate the community. For the children, they made music videos with psychedelic vegetables and put up these signs on the store's fridges. I put this one to the test, and I think they might be onto something. But most importantly, the local people were empowered and began making their own decisions about their health.
The community at Armata decided that they wanted to reduce the amount of sugar intake that they were having throughout the community.
The first high sugar item to go was the black fizzy stuff.
So they've said, we don't want Coke, so they don't have Coke. So no one is upset about it. It is a decision by the elders, and so we don't have Coke.
Maiwiru was working, and in a very short time, Armata had the lowest rate of sugar consumption in the region.
With the level of sugar consumption in other communities I've been in, it's astronomical. It is over the top. I think the Maiwiru group in itself could teach a lot of the other communities a lot.
But just when everything seemed to be headed in the right direction, the government slashed Maiwiru's funding.
The organisation is now left with the skeleton of staff. The nutritionist was the first to go. The Pitjantjatjara Yangundjatjara people really feel it because it was their idea. Like, they're the ones who saw the problem, they're the ones who bury their own people, they're the ones who want to make a change, and they've been totally ignored, overridden, and had funding taken off by federal and state governments and given to non-Aboriginal organisations. It's really quite outrageous.
The thing that struck me about Armata is that although Coke is gone, without a nutritionist to continue the education, people are still consuming vast amounts of sugar in other products. And their health is suffering as a consequence.
There's a perception abroad that the problems with obesity and diabetes may be related to alcohol, but here at Armata it's been a dry community ever since it was established. So all of the health problems, including diabetes and kidney failure, is all related to the diet.
John offered to take me to a special place where the full effects of a disabled Maiwiru can be felt.
I've known almost everyone buried here. I've got family members buried here. These 5 graves here are all people under 40. That's another young person in there. Whole group up here of 2 sisters and a brother who all passed away from kidney failure. Most of these deaths here are premature and could have been avoided with correct diet and access to affordable, healthy food. It's a complete tragedy.
After 4 days in Armata, it occurred to me that what is happening to my body is perhaps a concentrated version of what has happened here and in many other Indigenous communities. I'd been sugar-free for a long time, and now, by suddenly subjecting myself to a high-sugar diet, the effects have been both rapid and acute. If immediate action isn't taken to restore the positive direction that Maiwiru was heading in, then the oldest living culture on Earth is in great danger of disappearing.
Oh, look at that. 81.2.
81.2. Okay, so what's that in...
1.6.
So how, in a month, I put on 5.
Something like that. Yeah.
76.
You started out at 76. Yeah. Over 5 kilos. Oh my God.
What? Hang on, is that a... Hang on, don't tell me.
91.
91?
91.
So, okay, 7
centimetres.
If I keep going for the next 3 or 4 months at these levels, would I be knocking on the door of obesity?
Definitely. You haven't got far to go.
I'm eating a lot more than I would. I'm snacking a lot more than I would have before. I find it very hard to feel full.
Not surprising, because you're not eating very much good fats or proteins. It's the fat and the protein that actually helps us feel fuller. All the low-fat foods that we've been told are good for us and that we should be eating actually tend to be higher in sugar anyway, as you know, and they're not helping us to feel full.